welcome back to another video, my friends. So today I'm going to be talking about something that is not so different whatsoever. But yes, this is another living room video. I couldn't be bothered filming in my room because it's really cluttered in there right now. You're gonna have to deal with stuff in the background. You know what? I could actually just get some of this stuff out of here. Make it look a little bit neat. Anyway, so getting vintage camcorders. So I guess my real recommendations for getting vintage camcorders. Well, I'm gonna go through them right now. But first of all, I'm gonna go through the types of VHS cameras that exist. So the first type that I'm gonna be really talking about is that I'm gonna be talking about VCR and camera combos. So before VHS camcorder was really invented at all, they kind of had a system where it was a camera and a VCR that was separate, and you actually had to carry both of them. If you're gonna get one of those, which by the way are very rare and they're really hard to find, it's gonna give you an extremely vintage look due to the fact that, well, it's an older VCR, so it's like it doesn't have flying erase heads. Technology is way more primitive, but also the camera itself is also a lot more primitive as well. It uses a tube sensor instead of a CCD or a CMOS like most cameras use nowadays, including the exact camera that I'm using right now. And so the sensor, it's gonna be a lot softer as well, and it's gonna give really different colors, and it's gonna look really old and vintage. If you ever seen extremely old vintage video from like the 80s or something like that and seen the colors were like extremely off, most likely that was on a tube sensor. Now the next type of camera that I'm gonna be talking about is gonna be like the big huge full-size VHS cameras, and I did have one of those, but those have like a lot of issues with like bad capacitors. So anything from like the 80s, there's gonna be a really good chance those cameras from that era are gonna have bad caps, and what that means is that basically the camera is absolutely done. You're not gonna get an image out of it. Strangely enough though, like the VTR sections from like those cameras from like that era mostly will always work. I don't know why. I guess things were built better back in those days. Personally, I have experience with bad capacitors. I had a full-size Panasonic VHS camera. The capacitors went on that. Speaking about like the big huge full-size VHS camcorders, first of all, they are great looking cameras, to be honest. Like they look really cool, and they give an extremely vintage look as well. If you're really curious on like what the footage looks like from one of these cameras, well, this is what it looks like, and I think it looks pretty cool, to be brutally honest. And now we're going to be talking about handheld camcorders, VHS-C and High 8 and Video 8. So these cameras don't really have that capacitor problem if in like the mid-90s, but what they do have is bad VTR issues. A lot of times the heads are really shot on them, or in like the case of this camera, which is hooked up to my VCR right now, the tape just won't go in the camera at all. That is something you gotta look out for. It's not the worst issue, but it's actually kind of a big issue because then you're limited to be it inside your house, recording on a computer or a VCR. It's kind of frustrating. Another issue that older camcorders from like the, you know, the 80s and the 90s and sometimes even the early 2000s, a lot of times batteries also go on these cameras as well, which also limits them. It's not too hard getting working batteries, but they're just kind of pricey. They're like $40 to $50. So there are actually a couple exceptions. I mean, the JVC that I'm filming on right now has like a bad battery on it, and it's actually hooked up to the wall right now. But my High 8, that is like my sort of, I guess, my main camera right now, that actually has a really good battery on it, and the battery is just fully working. I'm actually really surprised about that camera because the thing just fully works. And that is also is true with my DVD camcorder. It almost totally works, but the viewfinder does not work on it. The LCD screen is just fine, but for some weird reason on the DVD camcorder that I have, the picture like jumps around it, it's like really glitchy and all that type of stuff. The viewfinder on that camera is completely unusable. Hold on, before the video actually ends, I want to do some like recommendations for like brands and all type of stuff. If you're planning on getting like a full-size VHS camcorder, I would recommend getting Panasonic or Canon. I don't know, those two brands, for whatever reason, they hold up really well. But if you're planning on getting like a VHS-C camcorder, a High 8 or 8mm camera, first of all, stay away from JVC. VTR sections on those just stop working. If you're gonna get like a camcorder handheld one, like what I'm using right now, I would recommend getting a Samsung, Sony, or Panasonic. Those always hold up really well. Like they hold up like really well. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this little video. I hope you guys found it somewhat helpful. Leave a like if you liked it, and yeah, have a good day everybody.